Hello and welcome to the Boston College Alumni Education webinar. My name is Jean Chiser and I oversee alumni education programming for the Alumni Association. Throughout this webinar, you are invited to submit questions by typing them into the question box in the webinar dashboard. Your questions will be sent directly to us here at the Alumni Association and will only be viewable by us. At the end of the webinar, our presenter will answer as many questions as possible. Throughout the webinar, we will be launching a series of poll questions, just like the one that just popped up onto your screen. Please take a moment and choose the answer that best matches your answer. Okay, we're just about ready to close this poll, and what I'm seeing here, Donna, is that it says 57% of people feel comfortable at an interview, 36% say no, they're pretty uneasy, 2% say they hate it, and a small percentage also says they're very confident. 4% say they're very confident. Okay, so pretty much we're in the comfortable to uneasy stage for this one. So now I am pleased to introduce today's webinar presenter, Donna Sullivan from Boston College class of 1985. Donna is the Vice President and General Manager of Transition Solutions, and I am happy to welcome and turn this webinar over to Donna.
Thanks, Jean. All right, let's get rocking. I think the things that we're going to talk about today are things that are applicable to a person at any level. So everything's transferable, whether you're the CEO of a company or whether you're just getting started in your career. So let's get started. Some of the things we're going to talk about today is, first of all, introductions. That first impact, we really want it to be strong. It sets the stage for the entire interview. So we're going to talk a little bit about something called a 30-second commercial. Some of you might have heard it be called an elevator speech. The bottom line is it's your first introduction to who you are as a product. We're going to talk about understanding the interview process. I so often hear about people who get frustrated with the process. I've gone there 10 times. I've seen 200 people. The janitor came in to say hello. We want to talk to you about what to expect. How many, who, what type, who are the decision makers, so that you can go through the process as stress-free as possible. We're going to talk a lot about alignment, understanding who you are and understanding the company or the organization that you're talking with and making sure that you're driving towards alignment. We also want to really try to get rid of opinions. Say, I'm the greatest person you're going to meet. I can do this better than anybody you'll know. And instead, put in fact. We're going to talk about how you can do that. How do you make a difference? And then how do you follow up? How do you not drop the ball? Maintain control. I'm an old basketball player. Don't do give and go. Do give and go, give it to me and go away. You want to maintain control, and we're going to talk about that. And finally, what's the process? Not just for the organization, but for you in determining, is this right for me? So hopefully this aligns with what you were looking for today. And as we get started, here's the goal. We want you to be equipped to make the right next career transition, not just the first thing that comes along. And so often when people are in the marketplace, they're out interviewing, hoping somebody makes them an offer, hoping somebody says yes to you. Instead, we want you to be equipped to be able to say yes or no and to go to the end of every process so that when you're making a decision about what you're going to do next, you're equipped with full knowledge and not partial knowledge so that you can say yes or no, just like companies are doing that to you. So let's get started. The 30-second commercial is the most important thing you can develop and own. It's the introduction. It's the question that says, geez, why are you here today? Or tell me about yourself. Or why don't you get started? It is who you are from a product standpoint in a capsulized format. And this is the most important thing that you can have under your belt. It's an overview of the product. What are the keys to success in developing this 30-second commercial? First of all, please, in any interview process, it's so important to be succinct. We live in a soundbite world. If you go on too long and you start to see the interviewer look out the window, especially bad if he or she doesn't have a window, you know you're going on too long. It's always easier to say, would you like some more information, than say, would you like the last minute of your life back? Please be succinct. Be strength-driven. What are the 2 or 3 things that capitalize why you are good at what you do? 2 or 3 strengths. Those are skills, things that you do well, that you like to do, that align with the job. Know what they are. And then back them up by fact. My strengths include ... Let me give you an example of how I've used them most recently. And then give them an accomplishment. An accomplishment is an action and a result. The action is what you do. The result is how it helped a company. Note what your strengths are and then give them an example. If you don't give them an example, you're just presenting your opinion. If you give them that fact, that action and result, you have proven your opinion and you've made it a fact. So here's who I am. Here are 2 or 3 of my strengths, an example of how I've used them, and that's why I see a great connection between what your company needs and my experience. Connect back to the company. In an interview, please let them know that you're not out trying to find any job. You want that job. When you're in an interview, whether you're balancing 2 opportunities or 10 opportunities, you're selling to that company that day. When you have this put together, you have what should be about 30 seconds targeting who you are, what your strengths are, an example of how you've used them, and how that company would value it. That's a 30-second commercial. Lock and load it. It makes your interviewing process much easier. Please be succinct. It's really frustrating as an interviewer to ask a question and then have somebody try to throw up everything they know about themselves, hoping something sticks to the wall. Be succinct. At the end of your answer, you might say, how do these align with your company's needs? What are the most important things you need in selecting your new employee? Those things help you to align, but that's a question after an answer. I guess that steps back to hoping everyone understands what an interview is, because so many people think it's an audition. I'm going to go in and I'm going to act like somebody else. I'm going to say anything that I think might make them happy. And it's not that, and people will see through that. It's definitely not a history lesson. Please do not go into an interview and start back to where you were born, where you went to elementary school, the first time you pumped gas or you scooped ice cream. It is not a history lesson. Companies have a need. You might be able to fill that need. You do not have to start back to prehistoric times to get that done. It's not an effort to find the most talented person. It's an effort to find a person who aligns with the job needs and the needs of the company in that opening. So what is an interview? It's a sales process. There are buyers and there are sellers. If you are the person going in trying to get a job, you're the seller. The company and organization is the buyer. You need to sell to them. If they like what you're selling, they'll buy it and you'll get what you need. One of the keys is, in an interview process, I feel strongly you need to do 3 things. You need to define what is your product. Then you need to align. You need to align your product. What are the things about your product that the company or organization would value? Define, align, and then differentiate. Because when you go into a company, if you make it into the company, you've made it past a screen, we'll talk about that in a minute, then most of the people that they're interviewing will have similar backgrounds in terms of function. So what you want to do is differentiate. Sell more than just what you did. Here is my title. Here's what my job description was. Here's what I do. No one else has your accomplishments. Lots of people might be able to sell what skills and the same skills you have, but nobody else can sell how you've used them and how they've positively affected a company. So that when you're answering questions, try very hard to always give them an example of how you've used it. What do you consider to be your greatest strengths is a very commonly asked question. My strengths include blah, blah, and blah. That's where so many people stop. As an interviewer, you can choose to believe you or not to believe you. But if you take that next step, some people remember that step by saying, so what? What's the so what? Or prove it. My skills include blah, blah, blah. Let me give you an example. I've recently implemented, which resulted in, now you've taken your opinion and you've made it a fact, and you've separated yourself from people who have had the same titles as you. Give them the proof with the pudding.
Donna, this is Jean.
So now I want to talk. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped over one.
You did. So I
get so excited, Jean.
I know you do. So we're going to launch a poll question for everyone. And please take a second to answer. So Donna's been talking about personal accomplishments. During interviews, what do you usually do? Take a few seconds and vote now, please. Okay, so almost everyone has voted. And Donna, what I'm seeing here is that 57% only share a couple of their proudest accomplishments, and 38% only share when they are prompted. And then no one said they talk about each one, so that's a good thing. And those are the bulk of the answers. So there you go. Back to you.
Okay, and I would really encourage you to get into a position where first of all, you should know as a product, what are your 8, 10, 12, there's no magic numbers, what's your 8, 10, 12 greatest strengths? What are those things that align best to the jobs you're going for? And I really would encourage you, for every strength you say you use or you've put on your resume, you know at least one action and result that'll make that a fact. And whenever you answer an interview question, always use fact and not opinion. Okay, just a little bit about the process, because sometimes people get frustrated because they don't understand what companies are going through. So first of all, when you take an interview, oftentimes you get called on the phone or you're Skyped in. This is called a screen. And so just to show you, there are 3 stages of an interview process: the screening, the qualifications, and then the culture. This does not mean there are 3 interviews every time you go through a process. Screening, you could be screened by 4, 5, 6 different people. Qualifications, the same thing. There are companies out there that will put you through months of qualifications interviews. And culture, though usually the shortest part, is sometimes the most important. So taking a step back, screening often happens with recruiters and people who don't know what you do for a living. This is where a lot of people get frustrated. I hear all the time, I'm not going back to that company. I waited 45 minutes for a recruiter and he or she was late, or they didn't seem to know what I do at all. That's not their role. Their role is to say, these are the 10 things a company is looking for. I need to get 10, 15, 20 people who have these 10 things. They don't need to know what you do specifically every day. A screen is a means in or out. At that initial stage of an interview, they are not looking for the best candidate. They are looking for the ones that align with what they're looking for. 10 things. I need somebody who has these 10 things, 12 things, whatever the magic number is. You're either in or out. I'll go over in a minute some of the most frequently asked screening questions. But do know that this is not the time to get frustrated with the company. If you don't like a recruiter, don't worry about it. You're probably never going to work with a recruiter unless you're a recruiter. What you want to do is get past the screen into the qualifications section. In the qualifications section of an interview, that's where you're going to meet people who do what you do. And through that process, you could meet with future bosses, future peers, as well as subordinates. Lots of people take you through a variety of qualifications interviews to see if you align with what they need within a department or a function. If you make it past that qualification section, typically you're at the stage where you're one or two, and they want to know who fits best. If you are the best candidate, if there are 5 people who all have great skills, great strengths, and can do the job, which one are they going to hire? Most companies won't say, hey, let's hire the jerk. We don't have one of those yet. They're probably going to hire the one that they like the best. And that's what the culture interview is all about. Who fits best into this culture in this company? Again, this could mean one interview that covers all the bases, or it could mean 15, 20 interviews. The best way to know what it means for each company you go into is ask the question, what should I expect throughout this process? And then you'll get an idea. So many people get stressed out because they don't hear from a company right back. That doesn't always mean that they didn't like you. So the best thing to do, again, in an interview process is at the end of your very first interview, ask about expectations. What's your timeline? What should I expect? When should I expect to hear from you? If you can get through this entire process, you're going to get the job. Typically, interviews start out very generically. You're going to get a lot of questions. Tell me about yourself. Why should I hire you? What's your favorite superhero? Everything from very basic questions to silly questions. Those are all part of a screen. They're usually done by recruiters or internal recruiters. Again, just trying to get who do we want to bring to the important part of the interview process. And then you're going to get behavioral interviews. When you start talking with people who actually know what you do, they're going to start asking you about, what do you do in this situation? What have you done in that situation? And they get to be much more open-ended and hopefully much more of a conversation. The bottom line to those behavioral interviews is you want to align with what the company needs. Please sell to them, not for you. A really big mistake people make is, you know, I really am looking for a job where I can do this, this, and this. Will you allow me to do this, this, and this? They're looking for somebody who can fill their needs, not fill your requirements. So make sure you're selling to them. So, just to give you a sense of the really basic screening questions that you might see, and I won't go through every one of these, but these are the ones that you should be aware of and really know how to answer. Tell me about yourself is that 30-second commercial. It either kicks an interview off in a great way or it makes things nervous and ill at ease right from the beginning. You should know what your 8, 10 greatest strengths are. When they ask you what are your greatest strengths, this should not be prompted about an example. You should say, I believe in light of your role, my greatest strengths are, boom, boom, and boom. Let me give you an example. Don't be prompted for it. Differentiate up front. How much money do you want to make is a question where you can turn an interview off or you can continue it on. There is one time where you can actually ask a question around that and not answer it. I don't want to get into a negotiation seminar, but I will tell you that one way to answer this when they ask without giving a number, because obviously the person who gives and doesn't, who gets the number and doesn't give it is in a better position down the road, is to say something like, you know, I fit very well in the company's structure that I'm working for now, but I'd much rather fit into your structure. Can you give me an idea of what range you're considering for this role? That's about your only chance to ask, well, what do you want to give me, instead of here's what I make. After that, you really do need to give them a number. What is a weakness? Just a tip on this, please don't give them a real weakness. If you're a customer service rep and you get cranky with customers after lunch, please don't tell them that. Provide something that you continually work on and in essence show that you have a strength in that you're always working to make sure you stay ahead of the curve. But don't give them a real weakness. You never want to lie in an interview, never ever want to lie. But it is a sales call. You should be talking about the positive and not referring to the negative. What are your long-term and short-term plans? A lot of people don't like this question. They think it's too nebulous, it's too open-ended. Let me help you with this. Your short-term plans would be given the opportunity to start in this role. You want that job. Your short-term plan is simply, I would love the opportunity to work at this company in this role. What are your long-term plans? Well, in light of that, you would like to help this company to grow and develop in some way that relates to the job you're going for. But your short-term and long-term plans in an interview process should relate to the job you're going for. And why did you leave your current position? If your 30-second commercial is the most important thing that you can put together, your rationale for leaving a company is the second most important. People are looking for two things. They want to know if you're not currently working, were you fired? And regardless of the reason for leaving a company, if you're not currently looking, the second thing they want to know is, do you have baggage? Do you have baggage about the company you're working for or the company you just worked for? Because if you have baggage about them or show them baggage, in other words, attitude, negativity, then it's only a matter of time before you're going to reflect that same attitude about us, and they will not touch you with a 10-foot pole. Your rationale for leaving should be positive, and it should be focused on the things that you liked about the last company, not the reason you just got fired or the reason you just left. Jean?
Okay, I am going to launch the next poll question. So this is talking about what do you do before an interview? Please read these and choose all that apply to you. Vote now. Okay, so just about everyone has voted, and what we're seeing here, Donna, is very high numbers for the first three. In the 80 and 90 percentile for those first three. So they practice how they will introduce themselves, they research the mission and the related company information, and they do prepare questions to ask the interviewer. Now 2% said they just kind of show up and hope for the best. Okay, back to you, Donna.
All right. Well, knowing it's a sales call, we hope that after this, not many people pick D. I will say a couple of things about B, researching the company. Make sure it's relevant to the job you're going for. So often people come into interviews and they see, gee, I see that your gross profit for last year in Europe was this, and they kind of try to memorize things in the grandiose version of the company rather than things that relate to the job they're going for. So make sure your research is relevant to what you're doing or what you would be doing within the company. And one thing about questions, always have them written out. If you have a great interview, all those questions will be answered by the time they get to, so do you have any questions about us? You want them written out, and on your portfolio, when you open it up, it's okay that the interviewer sees that, because it sees that you've prepared. It also says, when you get to that stage and they've answered all those questions, you can say, geez, I wrote out 10, 12 questions, and we've gotten to all of them. It's been a great interview, and they see that you did that. So it's an impressive thing rather than a, nope, I don't have anything for you. How'd I do? So make sure that you do those kind of things. Interview approach. I want to talk just a minute about behavioral interviewing. We just went over what's going to happen in a screening interview. And again, those questions could be asked 2, 3, 4 times. Be consistent in your answer, as long as your answer is a good one. Behavioral interviewing is really about finding out who have you been as an employee in the past. They try to see if this is the kind of employee you are, how does that relate to what our core competencies are? In other words, most companies have, here's the kind of person we're looking for in each role that we have. How do you align with those core competencies? Problem solving, troubleshooting, leading, those kind of things. And then obviously that relates to the industry as well as the company-specific core needs. Finally, and most importantly, it's really an indicator of past behavior, because past behavior is an indicator of future behavior. So they're going to ask you a lot about, tell me a situation where you did that, or describe an event where this occurred. And let me give you an example of some of the questions that they're going to ask. And again, we're not going to go through each one of these. I'll give you a minute just to read through them. But you can see it's describe something, tell me about a situation, think of a project, describe your behavior. So how do you prepare for this when you don't know what kind of behavioral questions might come up? Think about who you are as an employee, or think about who you are as a leader, and come up with your own core competencies. Here's what I am in terms of troubleshooting. Here's how this is what kind of leader I am. Who do I lead? How do I lead? What systems, what process, what tools do I use to lead or to manage or to be part of a project? Try to help beforehand, have an understanding of who you are and what your core competencies are. And I believe that this program is uploaded, so if people wanted to download this, you could also get on the web and just Google behavioral questions, and tons of them will come up as they relate to the function that represents you. Okay, let's talk about some keys to success. As we've discussed, always answer with the job in mind, and I can't emphasize it enough. So often people get into an interview and they answer with themselves in mind. The only analogy I can make is when Dunkin' Donuts sold me their coffee this morning, they didn't say, if you buy this coffee, we'll make $1.25, because that doesn't give me a reason to buy the coffee. But they did say, you look like someone who needs to wake up, needs something hot, and needs something refreshing. This will do that for you. That gives me a reason to buy the coffee. When I buy the coffee, they get their $1.25. Sell to them, not for you. Connect to their pain. Ask some questions. Hopefully, interviews are not interrogations. Most people go in thinking they're going to be. It's okay to ask a question. Tell me about the things that aren't going right with this job. What are the things that you're going to need to fix with the person you hire for this job? Try to find out why the job is open. Be succinct, be direct. I like to call it, I don't like to call it, but it's often called verbal vomit, where someone hears a question and they just go on and on and on. Be succinct. Again, it's always easier to say, would you like more information, than try to take the last 3 minutes back. As just noted, whenever you can create a conversation instead of having that awful, here's a question, answer it, here's a question, answer it. That's a one-way communication. You, one, don't have any idea if you're answering it right or wrong. You have no idea if you're connecting to what their needs are, and you can't source information so that you can enhance the questions that come up. So make sure every once in a while it's okay to answer a question and then ask one back. Being prepared, and it was wonderful to see that very few people say, I just kind of show up and hope for the best. People want to know you care. They want to know you care about that job. They want to know you care about that company. Everyone should have a portfolio of some kind. Inside the portfolio, you should open it up. There should be any kind of research you've done should be inside the portfolio. You should have any questions that you have. Knowing that you might, a good interview, you might meet someone past the initial interview. Have 10, 15 questions prepared and written out. Always have extra resumes, and tucked behind your resumes should be references. Never provide references unless they're asked for. But if they're asked for, always have them tucked behind the resume so you can pull them out. And obviously in today's world, everybody should have references on their LinkedIn as well. 3 or 4 people that have said wonderful things about you, because more people go to LinkedIn for information than any other place on earth today. Finally, the last thing to being prepared is to have paper and pen. Before an interview, always say, would it be okay if I write a note or two? Just about everybody will say yes, and then make sure it's just a note or two. Don't sit there and painfully try to write out everything they're saying. You're going to miss some key comments, and you're going to miss being on target for your answers. Some keys to failure: going there without your research, going there thinking they're going to love me, or going there saying they have to love me for who I am, because people who don't know you don't have to do anything. Not being prepared physically as well as emotionally, as well as from a knowledge standpoint. Your packaging matters. If this is and you are selling to them, part of the sales process is how you look. And that just means putting yourself in the best position possible and making sure you're dressing and acting a couple of notches above whatever level you're trying to sell into. It does matter. People who don't know you don't have to love you. A key to failure: not following the process from beginning to end. And the most important piece to that is don't fall out of the process before you have all information. Don't make a decision based on family, friends, neighbors, information, or hearsay. So often people say, I'm not going there because they don't pay, or I heard it's a horrible place to be, or it's too far away, or this or that, whatever the excuse is not to follow through in an interview. If an interview process is great, you'll be made an offer. At the offer, with full information, you can say yes or no. But if you say no before the process is complete, you're not giving yourself the chance to see everything. And always remember, what one company, one person hates, the same company, somebody's been there 20 or 30 years. So make sure that you're making decisions based off your own input and everything you've collected. Always follow up with professionalism. Try not to be generic in your follow-up. If you send emails, please don't write, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. It didn't work in the 70s. It's really not going to work in 2014. Be specific to the person you're talking with and make a difference. Just like you've spent the entire interview trying to differentiate yourself from competition, make sure all your sales touches, your follow-up after interview, is also specific to each person you talked with. Just a moment about the type of interviewers, and I think we've covered most of this. Recruiters are the screeners. They won't know exactly what you do. Functional heads are the technical experts. Line managers are the tactical focus. They want to know, what are you going to do the first day? What are you going to do the second week? What are you going to do the third month? Peers want to know if they're going to like you, if they're going to be able to work with you, and they want to know what kind of a manager you're going to be. And then subordinates want to know, what are we in for? What kind of style does this person have? What's going to await us? So peers and subordinates are often part of the process today, and often most, because they want to know the kind of person they're going to be around day to day. Okay, I talked a minute about image, and it's a very sensitive subject, and you need to do your research to know what kind of companies you're walking into. A standard is dress at least 2 levels above how you'd have to dress every day. If I'm wearing a blue suit, I'm not going to go to Reebok. That wouldn't be appropriate. But I will know what kind of casual attire is appropriate at Reebok. If I'm going to Fleet or Fidelity, I'm going to wear a blue suit, and I'm going to make sure I'm buttoned up. It depends on what kind of a job you're going for and what do you know about the company. The best way to ask is the person who calls you for the interview, and what is the appropriate attire for this interview? And get the answer straight from the horse's mouth. Always dress a notch above that. You can always take a blazer off. It's hard to find one if you need one. You can always take a tie off. It's hard to find one if you need one. As nervous as you are, and everyone would expect that you'd be nervous, make sure you appear confident. 2 easy ways to do that. Every time you meet somebody, make sure you shake their hand firmly. Don't change the shake of the hand depending on male or female. Firm, not knuckle crunching, and make sure you look into their eyes. Whenever you can use names, not overuse names, but use names, it always makes it a more personal interaction. And it's okay to ask for feedback. And we've talked about it via the verbal vomit. It's okay to take a breath and listen. Make sure that you don't anticipate a question so much so that you don't hear the real question. Listen, and it's the quality of communication, not how much you talk. Just like any company, you should know what your product is first. Know what your features are, know what your benefits are, know what your differentiators are. For you, what are your skills? What are your strengths? What are your accomplishments? Then know the market. No company just takes a product and throws it in the middle of the market and see who's going to buy it. Once you know the product, target your market. Know what jobs are out there and know which of your features and benefits you're going to sell to each opportunity. That's called alignment. Always be prepared, not just with a ton of numbers, but really, why is this job open? How can I best connect to it? What's its history been? Do the research beyond just numbers. And ask some questions. Understand the process early on. Then you'll have less stress and you'll keep the ball. You'll know it's been 2 weeks, they told me it would be about 10 days, I'm going to call them. Always keep the ball and then you keep control. Don't make the mistake of thinking somebody isn't a decision maker. Though there often might be only 1 or 2 people that say, yes, she's the one I want, there are many people along the line, from that receptionist you say hello to the admin that brings you through, to anyone you might meet, formally or informally, that can say no. You treat everyone with respect from the beginning of the process to the end, and not just the interviewer. If you get a panel interview and there are 3 or 4 people on the panel talking to you, you don't look at the person you know is going to be your boss and answer all the questions looking at them. You reply to all. Anybody can say no is the bottom line, even though only 1 or 2 may be the ones that say yes. And remember, it's not always the best that gets selected. Right or wrong, it's usually the candidate that sells themselves the best. So practice. Know what your strengths are. Know what the backup is. Understand who you are as a product, and practice out loud. It can only make you better. What I would offer is, don't go to an interview just for practice. Practice before, because if you go there and it's the job of your dreams, you're not ready because you're just practicing. So make sure you practice well ahead of your first interview.
Okay, we're going to launch one more poll question. And before I do, I just want to remind people that you can submit questions through the question box if you have any for Donna, because we're getting near the end and she will answer questions. So the new poll question is, what do you do after an interview? Please choose one now. Okay, and almost everyone has voted. So Donna, what I'm seeing here is 70% of people say they follow up with a personalized thank you email. 27% follow up with a written thank you note. No one says that they call the interviewer repeatedly, so that's good. 2% did say, I never follow up, I just want to hear back or wait to hear back from them. And now I'm going to put it back to you.
Sure. Well, I want to address those answers, because I think there's a couple things that we can do. If it's a sales process, touches matter. So you never want to be a pain, but you do want to be persistent. So one of the things that I would ask you to do is, before the meeting is over, before the interview is over, get an expectation of when decisions or next steps are going to be made. When they give you what that timeline is, I would always offer professionally and not in your face, would it be okay if I reached back to you after that time if I haven't heard from you? More people than not will say, sure, you can do that. It's also a great indicator. If they say, good gracious, don't call us, we'll call you, you might know you didn't do too well in the interview. But most people will say, sure, you can follow up at that time. That gives you a sales touch back. In a sales process, in an interview process, you want to become a person as often as you can. The cover letter and the resume should be designed to get you in the door. Once you get in the door in an interview process, put your foot in the door and become a person. Voices come next. You might get a phone interview. You might get a phone call. You're getting closer to being a person. You're not just written paper. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. You're not just written paper, but now you're a voice. And then finally, you want to get in the door and become a person as often as you can, because people relate to faces, emotion, and other people. My Girl Scout story is this. If a Girl Scout emails me, I can say no. If a Girl Scout texts me or even phone calls me, I can say no. But if she's looking at me, if she's knocked on the door and is looking at me, I'm going to buy cookies. In the interview process, become a person as often as you can. Do you want to call the interviewer repeatedly until you hear a decision? Absolutely not. But if you set that timeline at the end of the interview, when that timeline expires, you should give them a call and follow up. I just want to be persistent. I don't want to be a pest. We talked about a timeline. I'm following up on that timeline because I'm very interested in this opportunity. I think it's great to send an email immediately after the interview, and then perhaps a written thank you note a couple of days after. So you might want to try both. It's another touch, and it's another way to touch and reach back. Always personalize your note. Never make it generic. Okay. In closing the meeting, always ask for next steps and ask for timelines. This last one, be very careful about it. Is there anything that concerns you about my candidacy? Hopefully, you've addressed their needs and how you have aligned with their needs before this question is asked. What you really want to do when you ask this question is get an indicator of what they think about you and what your candidacy looks like. Because often they'll say something like, no, I think you've really done a great job with this, and I know you're going to get a call back. That can reduce your stress. That can make you feel better. And then sometimes people are very blunt and very honest, and they'll say, geez, you know, we really were looking for somebody who had this. Even though it's at the end of the meeting and it's tough to overcome, if you had that, you can say, geez, I'm really sorry we didn't have a time to talk about that. I actually have extensive experience, and it helps you to fill any gap that might be out there. And to all of your notes, and you all do it, send emails to everyone separately in the process. Don't send a group email out. Personalize and separate each email and make a connection with each person.
Okay, so
that's what we have today.
And Donna, we have, I don't know, 7 or 8 questions that have already come in, so I'm going to start off with the first one. And this is the question: what if you have been out of the workforce for 10 years? Do you highlight what you did 10 years ago, or do you focus more on your current volunteer work?
Great question. Do both. What you should focus on is you're probably going to go into the marketplace with more of a functional resume. And a functional resume versus a chronological resume is it highlights skills and strengths and experience. So you definitely do want to talk about what you've done during the time that you've left the job market where you got paid and you went into the job market where you weren't paid. You were still doing volunteer work. You were still doing and using skills and strengths. So be functionally based, be skills and strengths based rather than experience based.
Okay, next question says, I'm a recent graduate who was told after my last interview that I should, quote, show more of my personality. But I think I'm afraid that if I show too much of my personality, I will come off as unprofessional. Do you have any advice on how to balance being myself while still remaining professional? That's a tough one. It's that balance act,
yeah,
right?
I think, well, yeah, if you're a cheerleader, keep the pom-poms at home. If you're a hockey player, keep the skates at home. But what you can do is be prepared. Because I think it's like anything else. If you've ever seen somebody who's really good at a public speaking, you often hear people go, oh, he's such a natural, or she's such a natural. But they probably aren't. they probably prepared their butts off. They probably went over and made sure that everything they were going to talk about and everything they needed to say, they had it under their belt. Practice, practice, practice. Because the more practice you have, the easier it is to go left and right and to talk about things naturally. So you don't want to lose, you don't want to become a robot. Robots don't get jobs. Answer, question, listen to next one. Answer, question, listen to next one. But rather, practice enough so you understand who you are as a product and you can talk with somebody instead of at somebody. And finally, if you can use humor, humor is great, not jokes. Not, I hope everyone hears this, not jokes, but rather some humor within your discussion is always a nice way to get both parties relaxed.
Okay, so if the interview process consists of multiple phases, do I send thank yous for each individual phase or only after the final interview?
Okay, it's a sales process. I would have a sales touch after every time I've had the opportunity to talk with anybody in that organization. Make sure that the thank you changes in content, and make sure you're selling yourself when you're sending that thank you. An example, I really appreciated the conversation about your project management. I see that you do this, this, and this, which is exactly how I've experienced project management in prior roles. I really look forward to becoming a part of your team. So make sure every thank you is specific to the interview you had and helps to sell you and make that connection.
Okay, next. How do I speak about my previous salaries at an interview for a new job without sounding like I am expecting an unrealistic salary for this position?
Well, first of all, when they ask the question, you really want to try to get an idea of what they're going to be offering, so that if you can get instead of give, you're always better off. So if you ask the question or you say, geez, you know, I really made a great salary I'm really making a great salary at my current company, but at this point in time, I'd much rather align with your company and your structure. Can you give me an idea of what range you're considering? And then if they say we're considering 5 to 10, you can say up to 10, that's within my range. Or if it isn't, or they get you to give the number first, you can say, this is what I made, but please understand, what I do is just as important as what I make, and I'm really interested in this role. I hope we can continue to talk.
Okay, another question. How honest do you have to be about being laid off or let go from your previous employer? It says, how do you answer questions about how long you have been unemployed if it has been various certain number of months?
Okay, let's take the first part. In an interview or anywhere in life, there's lots of things that can be taken from you. People can take your jobs away, they can take your cars, they can take your houses, etc., etc. There's only integrity, you can only give it away. So in an interview process, never lie. It's not worth it. Never lie. So with that as a baseline, please understand that an interview is not a confessional. It's not the place where you tell them everything good, bad, and ugly. You are selling yourself. The company is selling themselves. They're not going to tell you that in the next cubicle over there's a guy that eats garlic pickles every day and smells up the place every afternoon. They're going to say he's a great guy, gets his job done well. That's the part they're selling. Same thing with you. Sell the positive, not the negative. When people answer questions about why are you leaving your old company or why have you left your old company, they think about that last day when there was a downsizing or they had a job elimination. Instead, think about the whole and lead with the positive. Well, first of all, I was at my old job for more than 3 years. While I was there, I was actually able to do this, this, and this, and it's the stuff I love to do. Most recently, there were changes within the department, and my job was eliminated. I understand that, but now I want to take the things I did at my old company and bring them here. So it's a lot about the things you appreciated about your old job, a little bit about what happened, and a lot about how you can help them moving forward. Because again, they want to know if you were fired. If you were fired, then you have to think about how you can overcome the performance issue. And then they want to know if you have baggage. And most people get cut because they express baggage. And I'll tell you this, I know it's a long-winded answer. If you use the word they, that is a great way to get cut. They decided they didn't need me anymore. They decided to go in another direction. And if you could see my air quotes, they are horrible people. I've never met them, but try not to use that word in your answer. If you've had a big gap, then what you need to do is show what you've done in that gap. Yes, I have been unemployed. By the way, only put years in your resume, not months too. That helps reduce the number of times that question is asked. But if it is asked, show what you've done in that gap. Show how hard you've worked. If you've done any contracting, consulting, volunteer work, put that. Make sure they know, while I've been looking, I've been doing this, this, and this, so that they see it's a glitch in the market and not you not caring about getting reemployed. Excuse me.
Okay, Donna, lots of questions coming in. How can you enhance your preparation for an interview if this is your first job? How can you sell yourself better if everyone is looking for someone with experience and you're brand new to the job market?
Yeah. You have used skills, you have used strengths. If you're just coming out of school, then think about the things that you did in school. Did you have any internships? Remember that you don't have to have been paid to have developed a skill. Have you been a captain of a team? Have you led a project? What have you done inside a school that you can sell? Part-time jobs, what skills have you honed in those environments that will help you connect to your first paid position? What you have to do is build a bridge on things that you've done in other environments that come into the job market.
Okay, we got a couple questions, couple people asking about interviewing for an internal posting. It says, what is your advice when you know and work with the entire interview panel? And what about, is it appropriate to ask for a salary range? And who do I ask for internal positions?
Whether it's internal or external, I would encourage you never to ask about salary range. You want to get it. You don't want to ask for it. It shows that all you care about is what you're going to make. And if you've done your research, you're going to know within a certain range what most jobs pay. Go to salary.com, go to indeed.com, do your research on the company, and you're going to get a sense of what the range would be. Never ask, what does this job pay? It's a really great way to get cut soon. And what was the first part of the question, Jean?
It says, so any advice on interviewing when you know and work with the entire interview panel?
Yeah, that's terrific. When you know them, they know you, and as long as you've built a great professional brand, that's going to help you. The internal job market is not unlike the external job market. Some of you may have been frustrated by hearing, well, we already have an internal candidate when you've applied for a job that was posted on Indeed.com or someplace else. A lot of companies already know who they want to hire, whether it's an external posting or an internal posting. So if you know the people on the decision-making team, make sure you're networking with them. Make sure you're talking about what is it that's most important. Get 15 minutes of time with them. Do your networking before it becomes an internal posting, or if it's already an internal posting, have you talked with each person about, can I get your perspective on where I fit, what I need to work on, so that when the interview takes place, you're more aligned. Networking is the key for any great interview process. The more you've been referred in, the better the interview will be.
Okay, we got a couple of questions about transitioning to new jobs. What are your best tips when you're interviewing for a new industry or career?
First of all, try your best to align so it doesn't look new. So sometimes, industry to industry, but you have the same job. It's not new. A lot of times people create a bridge that doesn't need to be created. So that's part of the align. If you've been an accountant in one industry for 20 years, you can probably be an accountant in a lot of different industries. Where is the alignment? In the job itself. So make sure that as often as you can say, it's not really new. Let me give you an example. I was a general manager in a manufacturing firm for a lot of years. When I left that, I knew there were certain things I never wanted to do again. I got into career management, I've never been called a career manager. But as I broke down the skills and the things I did within my job, I saw lots of connectivity. So I pulled out the things that I did, not called career manager, but under general manager, and built a bridge with the functional similarities. So hopefully that makes sense. It's tough when you say, I've never done this before, will you hire me? It's easier when you say, here are the things you're looking for, here's how I've done them, I see a great bridge.
Okay, I think this is a quick one. Should the references we bring to the interview be written out letters, or is it okay just to bring contact information?
Yeah, you should have contact name, address, phone number, email, relationship to you. Is it a boss? Is it a peer? Is it a subordinate? Have that, letters, depending on certain antiquated industries, they might still ask for letters, but frankly, who carries around a bad letter? Obviously, when you have letters, they're always good. What you really need to do is, one, be on LinkedIn and make sure you have at least 3 or 4 nice referrals on LinkedIn.
Okay, this one says, I have changed careers 3 times, and each position has helped me get to the next via transferable skill sets. That said, what is an appropriate length for a resume? I know we're talking about interviews, but this is a resume question.
I think 80% or more of people can have a 2-page resume. For me, it's really about, is it easy to read? Is there white space? Is it direct and sells you at the top of the page? You need to be sold at the top of the page. If you sell yourself at the top of the page, the rest of the resume sells to what you've sold at the top. 2 pages is the 80 percentile. If you have patents or you have publications or things like that, have an addendum page. If you're an executive, a real senior level executive, you can have multiple pages. Most 80 percentile, 2 pages is good. Most importantly, make it easy to read. Don't squish everything in to 1 page. That doesn't work. And don't squish 25 years into 2 pages. And remember, resumes, you don't have to go further back than 15 years.
Okay, and so now kind of a different question. It says, is it okay to have a short PowerPoint to refer to as the interview progresses? Do you ever see that?
It depends on, and it depends on your function. So graphic designers, marketeers, certain functions, it really helps. You got to be very careful about what you have. They really have to want to look at it. Don't force it on them. It's kind of like references. Don't say, gee, I can really show you this now. Do you have 20 minutes? But if it's something that helps to sell you and it's readily available and doesn't cross any company confidentiality, never put anything in there that you developed for another company without explicit permission from the former company.
Okay, there's 2 people who asked, do you have any advice for people searching for jobs in another city or another part of the country as far as preparing for an interview?
Well, you have to do your research, if there's different geographical impact. If you're trying to just get in the door, make sure on your resume you don't have address, you just have your name and your number and your email address, which I wouldn't recommend anyone putting their full address on a resume that goes out to a board or anything like that anyway. So if you want to be considered without the bias of relocation, don't put your address, don't say you're from Massachusetts, don't say you're from Connecticut or wherever it is you're from. Just put that in so you can be considered. And then understanding the marketplace down there. If there's differences because of the culture of the southeast versus northwest, doing your research. Indeed.com is a great place to get research done beyond Google. Google is a great place. And then there are some career-specific websites that you can go in and whether it's Google or AOL or whatever you use, make sure you know the region.
Okay, and a quick question. When is it appropriate to discuss benefits, before or during the interview? At all?
Your highest value in an interview process is when the offer is made. If you do a great job, you're driving your value up as time goes on. At the screen, you have no value. As you go through the qualifications, you're gaining value. As you get through the qualifications interview to the cultural interview, your value is rising. At the same time, where there were 50 of you, there are 20, now there are 5, now there's just you. Your highest value is when the offer is made. That's when you want to talk money. No time before that, because you can negotiate at that point. If you say, gee, that doesn't really work with me, and there's 50 other people around, they're going to say, okay, goodbye. If they've made a selection of you, that's where you're able to negotiate.
Okay, someone's looking for a little clarification on one of your statements when you said never lie, but then you also said don't give them a real weakness. How do you reconcile those two statements?
Well, when someone asks me, well, tell me what you consider to be a weakness. Well, I got lots of weaknesses. I eat too much ice cream. I drink too much coffee. I get cranky after hour-long webinars, but I'm not going to tell them that. What I'm going to do is say, geez, one of the things that's most important in my job is to make sure that I prepare for all presentations I'm about to do. If I don't prepare and people ask me questions, I don't answer them as best I can. So I really try to put aside time in a busy day to make sure I'm prepared for anything that's coming up over the course of the day, and don't just shoot from the hip. I've worked on that. I actually have planned it in my Outlook, and I plan it in my daytime. So I give them something that could be a weakness that I recognize could be a weakness, and this is how I work on it. So again, that's the confessional versus the marketing.
Okay, we have two more questions and then we're done. So the first one says, can you comment on the use of assessment tools as part of the screening and as part of the interview process?
Yeah, usually assessment is done further along than screening because it's pretty expensive to put an assessment tool in for 50 or 60 people. But assessments, there are a wide range depending on the level in the organization you are. There are really intense ones, and then there's some basic Myers-Briggs ones. The best you can do is don't try to lie to a line. Just, you know, somebody said, how can I be myself? Well, that's the place where you really just want to be true to, this is how I behave in a professional setting. But they're really just to make sure that they're not capturing somebody who's like really out far away from their cultural norm. And again, though, assessments are typically towards the end of a process, very rarely at the beginning.
Okay, and then the final question that we have time for today before we wrap up is, do you have any tips for interviewing in the industry of nursing? These seem to be different than business interviews.
Well, interviews are different from industry to industry, without doubt. In the behavioral interview section, that's where that would really come out. Nursing specifically is healthcare. Healthcare is typically, they're much more cultural. And it really depends too. Are you a nurse? Are you a nurse manager? You know, which side are you, clinical, or are you on the management side? So know the company. I hate to keep falling back on that, but you need to know which organization you're going to, what their history is, and then understand what your role is within that company. But just like nurses think interview is specific to them, you'll find the same thing to be true for clinicians, for people in academia versus people in high tech versus people in consumer goods. Understand where you're going and how you fit.
All right. Donna's going to put up her contact information on this next slide. And while she's doing that, I just want to say thank you, Donna, for leading this today's webinar. We really appreciate it. You have given us so much great information. And a few details for the people on the call. You will receive an email in about an hour asking you to complete a short online evaluation, so please take a few minutes to do that. I promise it's very quick. This webinar has been recorded and it will be available to view online by next week. And finally, our next career webinar will be held on Thursday, November 6th, and will focus on building your personal brand. You can register at bc.edu/alumni-ed. Donna, thank you very much, and goodbye from Boston College.